Liz is an executive and consultant who works with companies to brand better and speak gooder. This fiery redhead is the author of 3 books and has appeared on 2 TV shows, dishing the dirt on celebrity branding. She's appeared on every single news channel, including NBC, ABC, PBS, and perhaps even PMS. As the former brand manager of Quaker Oats managing a $650 million brand, Liz translates complicated strategies into winning tactics for small businesses. So here to share how to pitch in 60 seconds is my good friend, Liz Goodgold.
When I was an impressionable 13-year-old girl in Los Angeles, I wanted to be a California girl. So I got a bottle of Johnson & Johnson baby oil and I slathered it all over me. I took lemon juice and put it in my hair. And then I took a reflector shield and went up to my roof and paid homage to the sun for 6 hours. When I came down, I wasn't blonde, I wasn't tan, and I wasn't thin. What I had become, however, was roasted and toasted. As my mother tried to comfort me, she only had one question. Liz, what were you trying to do? And my answer was very sincere, and it was, I just wanted to blend in and be like everybody else. And it was at this moment when my mother told that to me that I recognized that it was time for me to embrace my individuality. It was time to become me. And that's why I created Red Fire Branding. Its goal is very simple, to work with other entrepreneurs on how to brand out and stand out. I share that story with you because it is exactly 60 seconds. It is 1 minute, which only has, just like your pitch should be, one goal. And let's be clear, when you're doing a 1 minute pitch, there's so much that you're not saying. In fact, typical or atypical of a speech is you work harder of what you're going to exclude versus what you're going to include. So in the short time that we have together, we're really going to focus on the great connection between storytelling on one hand and your 1 minute pitch on the other, and they come together perfectly. You get people to the ultimate goal of a 1 minute pitch. Sheryl Sandberg would tell you it's time to lean in. I will tell you that it's tell me more. This 1 minute pitch, if you will, is like dating. You can decide if you're trying to have sex on the first date, or you can decide that what you're trying to do on the first date is get to the second date. And that's really where we're going here, is you're trying to get and pique their interest so that eventually you move your 1 minute pitch to the 5 minute, to the 10, to an entire presentation that takes you to the promised land of what we hope is funding and success. As we merge these two concepts together with storytelling on one hand and the 1 minute pitch on the other, the real thing to remember is less is more. And even in the own example that I gave you about me, I had to work really hard about what goes in and what comes out. If I weren't standing in front of you, for example, the story would make no sense, because you kind of have to see how white my skin is, how red my hair is, to understand the comparison, right? If I were doing a podcast, it would be useless. Here's how I recommend that you work on your 1 minute pitch. You record yourself, and you look at that timer. And always look at, first time, what is your time? Second time, how do you get it 10% shorter? How do you get it 10% shorter until you have the bare basics, but enough so people understand where you're going, and more importantly, where you've been. I asked my husband to tell me the origin story of Spider-Man. Let me put it this way. It took my husband over 2.5 minutes to tell me the story of Spider-Man. So here, I'm hopeful here. Raise your hand if you know the story of Spider-Man, right? Okay, cool. So let's kind of use a little bit of the format that we know that I was just sharing. So let's start with some facts. What do we know? And this is where I need you to talk to me, okay? So what do we know about Spider-Man? Ding, ding, ding. So this is an essential fact, right? Right? So he gets bit by a spider, right? What's the other significant thing we have to share with our audience? Yes, exactly, right? And then, so it was like sonic or supersonic or something thing. And then third, it creates and inspires him, becomes the catalyst to do what? Become a superhero. And then the last part, Stacy, has to be a superhero for either good or bad. For good, right? So if we were going to put all these pieces together for our favorite superhero, it would probably go something like this. Peter Parker was a student who visited a lab and accidentally got stung by a spider. That spider had superpowers, and then Peter got superpowers too. And he loved it, and he figured out he could rob banks and he couldn't get caught, and he could make money, and he could figure out who was going to win, and he was the greatest success until, gosh forbid, he lets a criminal go who winds up killing his uncle. And he then has to make the pivotal decision. Will he go good or will he go evil? And he reaches the conclusion he has to do good, because with great power comes great responsibility. And that's the entirety of the story of Peter Parker. And I'm going to keep sharing with you, and you're welcome to ask questions throughout. I know technically we have a 15-minute Q&A. The best Q&A is the one that happens when it's on your mind. And Maggie's over here moderating as well. So you can always ask for people who are online to make sure that your questions get answered. So I want to give you a whole bunch of examples on origin stories and actually give you a formula so that every time you're doing your 1-minute pitch, you have all of these options at your disposal. Let me start here. This is the only pitch, and this is from a former client of mine, that has data at the beginning that works. So if you're keeping notes, my note is this. You can only have 2 pieces of data in a 1-minute pitch. Otherwise, and you'll hear me say it in a moment, it becomes a data dump. So you get 2 pieces of data and that's it. So the only pitch I've ever successfully heard goes by my client, Kim, which goes something like this. 38% of second grade girls do not eat lunch for fear of getting fat. When I heard that statistic, I was so appalled, and I realized, what is the state of dysmorphia among our girls in the US? I watched my sister dwindle from 117 pounds to 77 pounds and literally starve herself to death. It was at that moment I knew that I needed to create a bond, to change women's image, to fight for positivity, to work for inclusiveness, so no one ever again has to watch their sister starve the way that I did. So you're seeing some key pieces here, right? It's the story, she's connected, and then there's always, and that's why that was the pivotal moment that changed the way that she did it. In this ecosystem, we had one of our founders create a brand called Safe Arbor. And let me give you a fictionalized way of how the owners of Safe Harbor could have pitched. And again, it doesn't matter if you don't know, because if you're listening to me and I'm pitching to you, you don't have the backstory either, right? So I don't want to give you away, so you know. All you know is, for the time being, I'm Liz from Safe Harbor. And the pitch might go something like this. I have lived in many high-rise buildings, and I noticed that the very sophisticated ones started to install secure lockers that could only be opened with a code from a cell phone and were completely protected. These lockers were smart lockers. They enabled contactless delivery. It prevented theft. They kept them secure. It increased customer service and reduced labor costs. I looked at those lockers and I went, oh my gosh, that's what the cannabis industry needs, a safe way to deliver its product. There are over 7,500 dispensaries in the US as of today, and they too are clamoring for a way. If I can create that locker system for the cannabis industry, I will then have created a safe harbor for delivering cannabis. Right? We've connected. You're also seeing, right? We're connecting the issue, the problem, the aha moment, and the solution. But what I want to be clear on is that it doesn't have to be emotional, right? So the first 2 were emotional, right? They might have pulled a little bit at your heartstrings. But here's a woman who looked at lockers and said, this is an opportunity and there's money. And this is okay. So please don't think that it has to be anything crazy or bigger. What you're always looking for in that 1-minute pitch in your story is how to connect. Any way you can connect is a great way to connect. Here's another completely simple story. This is what we call the universality of the universe, right? You're looking for someone who can't put the tube back in the toothpaste, right? Simple problems. Her story goes something like this. My 5-year-old was brushing her teeth. And she said, Mommy, how come there's only white princesses on my toothbrush? And she looks down and she sees that she's right. And she has Ariel, and she has Frozen, and she has all these beautiful Disney princesses, but none of them were people of color at that moment. Woman looks at that, the mother decides, aha, I could create a brand, true, called Our Reflections. And it puts not only girl princesses, boy princesses, trans princesses, just to create a diversity of what's really in the world today, so that her reflection is literally our reflection of her brand. Right? Nothing momentous there, right? Her kids brushing her teeth, nothing going on. But if you put it in, you now have the essence of an origin story. The key connector that I was talking about. At some point in your story, you have to have this magic phrase. And that's why I created. Every pitch in the universe has to have someone. So that was the moment, and therefore I created. So that was the pivotal moment. That was the aha moment. If you don't have that moment, then your story is always, always going to fall flat. Let me give you another example. This company is called Mojave Rail. And I believe his pitch could go something like this. I am an avid biker. I can't wait to explore the great outdoors of Nevada. And I realized one day, as I was trying to install my bike rack and get my bike to the roof of my car, that I almost fell off and killed myself. And I have a girlfriend who's even smaller and smaller stature than I am, and she almost killed herself trying to climb up and connect it, and the thing goes up and the bike's 6 feet high, and I realized this is so dangerous. But what if, instead of me trying to go up there, how about if I have this cantilevered system onto the car so that it pulls down, I install the bike, and then I flip it back up? My aha moment. And therefore, I can finally change the way we install bike racks such that the mountain comes to Muhammad instead of Muhammad go to the mountain. Done, right? Problem, solution, aha, and that's why I created. This is, you're getting this for me, right? It's a pretty simple formula, but it still works every single time. So there's my problem, aha, and that's why the solution. Let me give you another one, just in case we don't have enough. This is one for a company called Freebird. Very simple story, and hers goes something like this. I was a very, very successful hairstylist. In fact, I was so successful that as I went from salon to salon, I started getting phone calls from Hollywood celebrities who would fly me to Los Angeles to do hair. And we're talking $350 to $500 per hairdo, which is pretty amazing. And then when I realized, and I started to ask the source of the business, it wasn't what we typically think, which is referral or word of mouth. It was because my husband was the ace of technology. My husband was the king of creating a website, integrating SEO, so that I always came out before I really had any celebrity clients. I was a celebrity hairstylist. He had mastered SEO. And then when I went back to my own salon and people were asking me how I did it, I realized I didn't do it. My husband did it because he harnessed the power of technology. And that's why I am on a mission to modernize, digitize, and monetize the web for hairstylists across the US. And when you put those together, and that was done intentionally, and we start thinking about that, the words go together because they rhyme. And if we're always looking at ways to pull that last part together, look at alliteration, so that mean they all start with the same word, right? Right? So this one all ended the same, or even if I told you mine, right? It was brand out, stand out. They also rhyme, right? We all know this from Dr. Seuss. There's a reason why he's amazing, right? And he was amazing because we always remember at the top of the list on what do you do in mnemonic devices to increase recall? It is number 1, rhymes, number 2, alliteration. And if you can find a way without it being corny, it is your secret weapon to creating really, really good stories. In each of those examples that I've given you, this is what I call your killer ending. So if you notice, we talked about story, problem, solution, and that's why. And then each of those has that killer ending. So whether it is Muhammad coming to the mountain, whether it's modernize, digitize, and monetize, whether it's brand out or stand out, you have to wrap the whole story up in a bow because we know this from order bias. We remember the first thing you hear and the last thing we hear. It's like a sandwich and there's nothing but bologna in the middle. So even if you goof up and you have a terrible, you're like, oh man, my 1-minute pitch was awful. You can always save it by the end. So think about that for a moment. So even if you have struggle in the beginning, it doesn't have to be so hard or so big, long as it still gets the point and your moment and what they remember is at the end. So a little bit backwards, but it works. As we start talking about how to tell us stories, I thought it would be important to call and to share with you what I call the 7 deadly sins of starting a speech or a story. So here comes the first one. Questions. Like many of you, I Googled how to create a 1-minute pitch. And I will tell you that one of the most common ways that professionals recommend you start a 1-minute pitch is with a question. Here's my question to you. Why does it not work to start with a question? Any idea? Why doesn't it work? I mean, everyone tells you on Google, you should start with a question and you engage your audience from the get-go.
Solution, maybe?
Well, so you don't think so. One of the what I'm hearing is it might not work, or they might give you the answer that you don't want. And all of a sudden, right, if you don't speak for a living, someone giving the answer you don't want, all of a sudden you're entirely thrown off. Right? So that doesn't work. And here's my real reason. Yeah, go ahead. I'm interested. Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
So it's a brilliant answer, right? So here you have 60 seconds and you just lost, right? So you're waiting for someone to answer and therefore there goes 10% of your time of dead air. It's like radio. Dead air is never your friend. Let me give you more reasons. The longer you speak, the more people understand you. So when you get to the 10-minute pitch, you're good and you can relax a little bit more. And we hope, right, in your 1-minute pitch, they don't know who you are. So literally, I was listening to someone's pitch on YouTube yesterday, and he starts his stone cold just like this. How many of you have parents, friends, colleagues, sons, brothers, daughters, sisters, clients, or colleagues who need to lose weight? Okay. So first of all, that's the universe. Second reason, and this is the real reason, is if I'm in the audience, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Is it a rhetorical question? First, rhetorical questions never work in a speech, by the way, never. So if you want to ask the audience a question, you have to do a whole bunch of things to make it work. So if I want to ask a question, right, Logan, I have to say, by a show of hands, right? You have to do, by a show of hands, how many people here want to lose weight? Raise your hand if it's you want to lose weight, right? Raise your hand thing. Now keep your hand up if it's your mother. Keep your hand up if it's your sister. So I am going to be using all of my gestures in the universe to help break. I'm going to be doing like this. So tell me, I'm going to lean in. I am probably doing 5. If I ask a question to the audience, I'm going to do 5 different things to let them know I want to hear and see that answer. And if you have 60 seconds and you haven't practiced all those skills, by a show of hands, these are married to each other. The minute you say by a show of hands, it has to do this. Because then people say, otherwise, the person in the audience feels like a fool, which is the worst position to be in, and blurts out the answer. I want to lose weight. And the other thing it's a lousy question is because the answer is always yes. The other question that I hate is this one. How many of you here want to make more money? Right? These are why I hate these silly questions. Let me give you some more. Robert Frost once said, freedom lies in being bold. And that's why I think I should present to you my solution on, do you see what I mean? And the other part is, and I hope you've heard this, is when you go to tell a story, you are sharing a piece of you, even if it's your observation, right? Well, me quoting Robert Frost doesn't tell you a whole heck of a lot about me. If you have come and I have been invited to pitch for 60 seconds, the person's view you want to hear is mine, not somebody else's. And take some of these with you. So if you go to other pitches, if you go to chicken dinners at your marketing association, if you go to some events, and you'll notice, you'll hear most people start speeches this way. And I hope from now on, you'll look at that and you'll go, that's not my favorite way to start a speech. It would be so much better if that person hadn't started with a question or didn't start with a quote. Let's have some more. Oh, this one. This is probably the one that boils my blood, right? I'm going to start our conversation today about branding by giving you the definition of branding according to Merriam-Webster. Boom, boom, boom. True story. I went to a big fundraiser and Laura Dern was the keynote speaker. And I sat on the board, so I know darn well we paid her $10,000. We do a huge introduction. You know her from Jurassic Park. She comes up to the microphone and she's like, well, thank you guys so much for inviting me here to speak. I really didn't know what to do. And I hadn't worked on my speech, but I thought since I'm here to talk about success, I would Google success. And so let me start with the definition of success. To this day, I will never watch a Laura Dern movie. Okay? I am so livid that she had $10,000 and she didn't prepare and she thought she would Google for me the definition of success. Okay? Doesn't work. Oh, here's one of my favorites. Let me give you the history of anything. And unless you are a rabid history fan, it's going to fail. In 3500, we developed the wheel. Shortly thereafter, we invented the chariot. When we went from the chariot, we completed the thing and got to the canoe. These are the key points of transportation in our history. And that's why I'm going to create a disruptor in the industry, my favorite word of all time, to compete with Lyft and Uber, right? It's going to bomb. It's always going to bomb. And this is the one I was telling you about, data dumps. And you'll often hear this. In fact, I was just listening, believe it or not, to the TEDx winner from Australia on his 1-minute pitch. And the part that I had such a difficult time with, and you're welcome to Google that as well, is that he throws in 6 statistics in a 1-minute pitch. And by the time he finishes, I've lost him. So he finally says, and that's why I'm going to change this gap between the statistics. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I must completely have ADD because in 60 seconds, I forgot how he connected the statistics. So my rule of thumb is maximum number of statistics that people can truly digest is 2, right? So maybe there were 7,500 dispensaries, right? So maybe there were X number of bicyclists. Maybe there were number of hairstylists. The percentage of second graders who don't eat lunch for fear of getting fat. Yeah, go ahead, Stacey. That's great. That I understand. So what Stacey had asked is it good to say, well, my solution is that employers hire 90% faster? I think that's a great statistic. And it makes sense. And the other thing, and here's a weird oddity, is if you're trying to quote a statistic, try to use the exact number of the exact number. Because there's a phrase that I use called specifics are terrific. And what it shows, if you actually know that there are 7,489 dispensaries, people are more likely to believe you than if you just said 7,500. So if you know the exact, that if it's really 89.3% of employers recently polled in a survey last month by SHRM, do you see how you, so what, I hope what you see and hear what I'm doing here is I am injecting the data and backing it up to give you credibility. Remember the old adage, which you talk about in my favorite police procedurals, which is if you lie about one thing, they've lied about everything on the defendant, right? So one of the things that we try to counter is by sharing more of, right, love or thought, the truth. So the more that you know exactly, and you know even what, then it's easy for a 1 minute pitch, right? You can remember one statistic. 89.7% of SHRM people recommend that they can hire 90%. You are golden. So I like that quite a bit. Ooh, this one's a tough one. And all I'm trying to say here is that no matter what you do, it has to be you. This, what do I mean? It means I don't want a fake story. And here's the thing, often I hear this one, which is, I remember going to school with my friend Julie, and Julie suffered from ADHD, and I could see that she didn't focus, and I always felt bad for her. And so I thought that I would create the solution for all of the Julies in the world. And the reason why that rings false is, unless you can really bring Julie to life, and therefore she partnered with you to found that company, unless she is part of now your tribe, you don't know how Julie feels. So it doesn't feel authentic. Or you can take, again, similar to thing, it can be third person, which is take a huge step back. And maybe this one you say, 11% of children today in the US are suffering with ADHD. More significantly is it increases every single year. This statistic makes me cringe because my son too suffers with it. So therefore, I am on a mission to find a non-stimulant solution to ADHD to help those 11% of children increase focus, attention, and impulse. Okay, so, but the whole thing about trying to create a fake story doesn't work. Trying to pull something at our heartstrings and it's fake doesn't work. There's a owner also here based in Nevada who has a really simple story where we actually had to increase, if you will, the velocity of pulling the heartstrings. So his story initially was nothing but facts. And the problem with if it's just facts, we don't care, right? Data strays, but stories stay. Data stray, but stories stay. So what I had him do is really tell the story from the heart, which he said, I had no choice but to put my 83-year-old mother into assisted living. And what I discovered was, unless I phoned my mom, I had no idea what was going on in her life. And in fact, the center only called me with bad news. Your mom fell today. Your mom missed her appointment. Your mom's having problems with her meds. And he said, well, why couldn't I get some good news for a change? Could someone let me know if she's going to bingo? Did she have any other visitors? Is she going downstairs for lunch? Is she taking all of her meals in her room? And he realized there was no way. If she consented and through HIPAA laws, she could opt in and he and his sister could see how well or not well that his mom was performing, it would make him feel closer. And that is why he created CareShare. True story, right? He just had to share a little bit more as to why would he come up with that idea. And it's real and it's authentic. And he didn't have to invent a fake friend. And I know, Steve, this is Maggie's favorite one. And this is what we call, and maybe you can give me an example of who thinks they're really profound and what did they say at some point where you just went, man, that just drives me crazy. I don't know. But see, to me, sometimes it's like people try to be. I was thinking, this to me is one of mine. I was thinking that the world would be a lot better if we, and this I think is why we ho-hum, with world peace. This is like the Miss America statement, right? They're so thin, or I'm on a mission to change the world. No, you're not. All of us are on a mission to build our business, to get funding for our business, to get customers for our business, and to grow that business. And we hope eventually so great, sell that business. That's what we're really on a mission. You don't have to have anything. And don't forget, every time when I go through that formula, which is this incident happened, and therefore I saw, and therefore I created, it's good enough to say because there was an opportunity, it's a missed need, it'll make money, it'll give. If you're talking to people who want to invest in your company, they want a positive ROI. So they are really good with you telling them, because here's the market potential. Or even starting with every one of my competitor does X, but why hasn't anyone seen this opportunity? And that's what I'm on a mission to do. That's perfectly acceptable as well. But trying to be so profound is such baloney and absolutely drives me crazy. Okay, so I know that we have things and you have the ability to read me questions over there. People here, thank goodness, have had the ability to ask questions as well. But sort of making sure that we can wrap it up in a bow. And if not, we'll make sure that you have a chance to also work on your 1 minute pitch. And I am happy to listen and gab and hopefully help improve it as well.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first thing. Make my life easy. What's the name of the product or service?
Record.
Records? Record, RECORD.
Yep.
Okay, so we have, it's a product or service.
Yep, it's service.
Okay, and what does the service do?
It's an app for a phone for people injured in a car accident.
Okay, so don't forget, every time we go to that 1 minute, and therefore I'm going to help people ADHD, that's our target, right?
Yeah.
So as we start filling in this formula, I created a product that does the to help this specific target. So I created Record to help
Clients of people injured in a car accident.
Yep.
Manage their personal injury case. That's too many words, but
that.
yeah.
Okay, so this app is on your phone. So when I get into an accident,
Mhm.
I can press that button, if you will. Is it analogous to remember the old star button?
Yes, I do remember the star button. It is more, you actually get it. I know this is not part of the pitch. So
Okay.
it's just context. You get it from the attorney. If you hire an attorney, the attorney will have you install it, and it's a way for you to track everything that you have to do for your case.
So it's not so much that at the moment of
No.
impact.
No. it's
Okay,
not
so
that.
that's really key to say. So my question to you is, why did you create this app?
Because I found there was a huge disparity between knowledge that a client has. Most people, it's their one and only time they've ever been in a car accident. And the attorneys that they work with, it's the 1000th case they've handled that year, and they've answered the same questions thousands of times, and they're tired of doing it, so they don't do it very often or very well. So this lives in the middle to educate the clients and offload some of that burden from the attorney so that they don't have to keep doing the same things over and over.
Okay, so, and were you ever in an accident? Is that what?
I wasn't next.
Okay, so now we know where we're getting somewhere,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
I'm sorry, tell me your name.
Kenny.
Kenny.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we know that you can tell it a few ways, right?
Mhm.
So one is simple,
Yeah.
and you don't have to be traumatic, don't have to think. It was like one of those days, and I'm sure you've been there, I had a little fender bender. But it's my little fender bender cost me $8,000. So then when I hired a lawyer to help me recoup and get the $8,000 back and make sure my neck wasn't killing me, I recognized that this lawyer knew everything rapid fire, rapid fire. He could just rattle it off, and I knew nothing. And then he started to say, well, don't you know? And I realized here is a knowledge gap. Here is the lawyer on one side and the person who's actually paying the bill on the other side. So therefore, I created an app called Record, which has one record, which puts everything together to make sure that no longer does the knowledge collapse.
We're here to help every client record their record.
Thank you.
There's a.
Right?
set of things
Because it's a
to do.
homonym, right?
Yeah,
Did that help, Kenny? Did a little
yeah,
bit more?
it's good. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Okay, online, you invited people to do a 1 minute pitch and
Yeah.
you would help them out. And so David responded, I can't do a 1 minute pitch today. It takes a long time to scratch one together.
My name is Stacy Elaine Sharp, and I created a platform, basically disrupting the staffing industry space, very similar to like LinkedIn, Indeed, and Career Builder.
Mhm.
But we're a job assignment platform. So I just say my pitch, or
Go ahead. Let's
So-
start it and let's see if we can make it a little better.
yeah. So employers can hire 90% faster from us because all of our candidates are already vetted with background checks, skill set tested, and E-Verified, and they all have video resumes of themselves, presentations of themselves. The candidates can get alerted of job assignments versus job matches anywhere, anytime, in any place.
Okay. So there, explain to me, to make sure I understand, there's a difference between job alignment versus job match?
Yeah, so basically in a staffing agency, you go there to get temporary or temp to perm assignments, a bridge to permanent placement. With job boards, you go online to post your resume or search for a job.
Yep.
And all they do is match you to employers. So there's a middleman there. So we basically eliminated the middleman on both the staffing industry side as well as the job board side, because job boards use staffing agencies and staffing agencies use job boards. But with us, it's a one-stop shop, basically, where they can pick up job assignments. So they're not searching for jobs. They're not posting their resume, although they can, but they're actually getting alerted of real job assignments to show up to work.
Okay. So one way you might start is, if you haven't been following it, that LinkedIn has recently reported that almost 30% of all jobs are fake
Yeah.
that are posted. So either the HR positions are headhunters that don't exist, or the companies don't want to look bad by not posting and keeping the idea and the value for shareholders high.
Wow.
Yeah. So one option is to expose that story and connect it to say, and that's why I created this, so that all the people are vetted, they're legitimate jobs, they're not going to get ghosted. These are reputable things. Because there's also stories, and this I really would put on your list, Stacey, to research.
Okay.
There's the other story on LinkedIn, which is blew up virally, which is not only that 30% are ghosted, which is people being offered fake jobs,
Yeah.
right?
Do you mind? I'm recording you as well.
That's fine.
Okay,
It's
thank you.
I'm hoping it helps. So the people, and you would think, well, what would be the harm in that? Well, I'm talking about people go through it and then they say, no worries. So why don't you go ahead and here you owe us for this computer. And then we'll send you the credit card and you'll reimburse you, or you'll put an expense report. So they have actually bought their computer, $1,400 worth of equipment, and the company doesn't exist.
Mhm.
And
Okay,
that's the
scary.
pain. And so so any of those stories, and the last person who looked up the story, whatever, he lost like $3,800. And he thought he did his due diligence because they just created a fake LinkedIn profile. There's no vetting whatsoever.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So I think those might help a lot, for you want people to go, wow.
So David is saying I can potentially use a 1-minute pitch for Washington DC Quantum Computing Conference pitch. I proposed last night, I would use a 1-minute pitch to start the talk and like to have her throw rocks at it.
Okay.
All right, David, I'm going to let Kenny talk again, but I'm going to promote you so that we'll be able to hear you.
Oh,
okay?
yay.
So one of the things that I ran across, well, I still run across, obviously, even when we were talking right now, was the knowledge gap people have when I come to tell them my story. Like, say you're at the bar or whatever, and somebody's like, what do you do? And I want to tell them,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, they're not really interested in a personal injury act because they have no desire to hear about it. Is there tips, or what am I trying to ask? Like, how to get somebody interested in something that they don't care anything
Yeah.
about?
Okay. So now you're in another area, which is one of my favorite things in the universe, which I could do a whole talk on, which is what I call the 7-second hook. The 7-second hook is how you introduce yourself. So you just grab people's interest. So the worst example is, hey, what do you do? I sell insurance, right? The minute I hear that, I can't run fast enough, and right, I'm going to the bar immediately, right? So I actually work with people to create really interesting 7-second hooks, which has the same goal as a 1 minute, which is tell me more.
Yeah.
Okay, so follow me,
Yeah.
keep following. And there's 1,000 ways. It can be done with humor if that is your personality. All I say is that on your 7-second hook, it has to match your, what I call your brand DNA. Okay, so here's this one, I have tons of funny ones, but this one I love as well. And you're, oh, what do you do? She goes, oh, I'm really into spirituality. I work at a wine and liquor store and I help you pick the right spirit.
That's good.
You know what I mean? I have a client who's a printer, and she goes, instead of saying, which is really one of the worst things to ever say, is a full service. She goes, I am a printer in San Diego. I print everything except money or pornography. Okay. Massage therapist. Hers is really, bless her heart, is, I am a massage therapist who only works with people in pain. I don't do any fluff and buff. Right. So she's really, so you see what I mean? So sometimes you say what you are by saying what you're not, but you can ask me more, but that's what I really call the 7-second hook, which is to get them. Yeah, something that my husband does, and he says, what do you do? He goes, I have a pee emporium. I'm literally the pee in a cup for drug screening. And if so, you're in the right place. Okay. Everyone's unfortunately have to pee in a cup, and that's the business. That's as, plain as you can make it. Okay, let's listen.
So this is just catch as catch can, because it takes a long time to figure out what you're going to leave out of your 1 minute talk. And I really appreciate the golden nuggets you're giving us. But my situation is that I have proposed a talk in Washington, D.C. that may be accepted, likely will be, at a quantum computing conference. And I have a quantum computing data encryption technology that stops quantum computers as well as artificial intelligence and machine learning dead in their tracks. So I'm just trying to make this up on the fly. I didn't realize we'd have this privilege today. So I think I might start off with something such as, if you ever buy anything online or do banking services or do any transactions on the internet that you'd like to keep private, including your passwords and keywords, this talk is for you. As it turns out, data encryption today and in the future is based on mathematics. Unfortunately, advanced mathematics can attack advanced mathematics. So what we do is we fortify standard data encryption in ways that do not involve advanced mathematics, thereby completely incapacitating any attack, keeping your passwords, your bank accounts, your online transactions safe from malicious intent.
Okay, so the good news is I understand now what you're talking about. The suggestion for improvement is really at the beginning, because even in here, everybody here has something they would like to keep private, and we don't mean just our bank accounts or our pornography accounts. What we really mean, we all know, and so I think you have to flip it over, which is, we all know that data encryption is not 100% fail-safe. Or we all know that what we think we're doing on our web browser in private is not private at all. Right? Or then give me a statistic of either X amount of identity fraud, X amount of percentage things, millions stolen by banking, and then connect it with that's why we created, which is the data. This part is the solid part, which is the data encryption and mathematics part. Are you there?
Yo, I'm here. I'm listening. This is wonderful.
Okay, cool. So the good stuff was all, tell me if you agree, the good stuff was when we got to the data, yeah. And then so start us differently is, we all know that what we do on the web isn't private. In fact, X number of people are hacked, identities are stolen, and over X number of billion are stolen every year thing. I'm on a mission with my data analytics company to make sure and encrypt it further so that people who go online and want to keep things private remain private. Okay.
That's absolutely beautiful. My only thought is something that you would not be aware of, and is that most people think it is secure, but it's not secure, because countries like China are vacuuming up everything on the web right now, because when quantum computers come out, they have a chance of cracking it and thereby going in.
I have an idea for you. Okay,
yeah.
So you talked about math, right? In the beginning part, and you said it was math. Maybe there's a way to start and say, I bet none of us in this room knew that math was a dirty 4-letter word. It's math that is undermining our security and our privacy of keeping things safe on the internet. I'm on a mission to unmask the data encryption to make sure what you want to stay private stays private.
This is really great, and I've got a lot to work with. I am profusely thankful for you and StartUpNV. This is just wonderful, and they've told me that they may invite you for a lunch and a lunch and learn.
I may get invited back.
Yeah, I'm going to be in the front row.
Thank you.
The 1-minute pitch is really hard. There's a ton of information out there on the internet about a 10-minute pitch or a 5-minute pitch. But the 1-minute pitch is really, as Liz says, you can have 2 pieces of data You got to make it emotional, and then you got to have a strong close. Right, Logan is suggesting that you look for an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch typically is 2 to 2.5 minutes, so it's a little bit longer. You can include a little bit more information, but it gets you going in the right direction.
It does. And here's where we get us to, but one, you can always reach out to me. You should be able to find me easily, Liz Goodgold. Trust me, that is left the man, kept the name, the best gift he ever gave me. So truly, so I loved it when someone said golden gold. And then last, you can always find me at liz@redfirebranding.com. And all I can tell you from here is always remember that less is more to make sure that your one pitch brands out and stands out.
Okay, there is one more here
Okay, cool. We won't.
for a little bit of feedback. Okay, now I have to read it, so I'm not as versed in how he would present it with the tone and emphasis. I grew up in Los Angeles, breathing horrible smog and wanting to help clean the earth. I studied engineering, and after 44 years in the solar energy industry, and after developing a clean tech product for 2 companies, I raised the seed money and want to introduce this better mousetrap for PV solar farms.
Okay. So far, I'm tracking purposely. I'm tracking perfectly. I am understanding the outliers. I don't understand the mousetrap metaphor in here. I understand whatever this gentleman, it sounds like, has the absolute best background in the universe. So I'm completely tracking this. So I'm just waiting for that next part, which is we know you've got the credibility.
And that you've built something new, but you haven't actually I don't know what PV solar farms are.
Exactly. And I unfortunately thought of like PVC pipe or something like that. And that's the other problem. And I'll put that in as a note for all of us, which is what I call ADW, acronyms don't work. If in doubt, leave it out. If in doubt, spell it out. Okay. So even no matter what acronym you think the whole world knows, like, oh my gosh, you need an IP attorney. No, you need an intellectual property lawyer. Okay. So spell that out. So this person clearly has the background. I just want to know. And that's why I created polyaluminum things, which is on a mission to clean the air in LA, California, and Beijing as well. Right. Isn't that one of the biggest smoggiest where I've been?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So tinker with that. And I think that would make it a little bit better. I completely understand your credibility. I just want to solve, and it solves this problem for this universe. So it solves this problem for the cities. It solves this problem for eliminating smog, emissions, carbon footprint, whatever. Cool.
Liz, thank you so much for coming today.
You're welcome.
It was exciting as usual. I missed the candy. Usually Liz brings candy to these things and throws.
I know. This is a small little suitcase.
Yes.
Liz Red Fire Brand.
Yeah.
Liz
Liz
at
at redfirebranding.com. Trust me, you'll find me.